It's time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France with our very own Florence Villeneuve.
Hey,
Hi, Flo. We are looking today at education, a sector like so many others in France that's been hit hard by the pandemic. It's been a weird year for students, of course, especially hard for high school seniors who are getting ready to pass their infamous Baccalaureate, the bac.
That's right, and we've already talked about the bac on French Connections. The French love to brag about the bac and how hard it is because it implies that French kids are very smart. Well, for the second year running, COVID has invited itself into the curriculum of this national monument. Last year, for instance, for the first time since its inception in 1808 under Napoleon Bonaparte, well, the Baccalaureate did not take place in its traditional form. And this is incredible because remember, there were two world wars here in France. There was the May 68 uprising, and the bac still went on until last year. In 2020, students received an average score for each subject that was calculated it was calculated over tests and coursework, this continuous examination, continuous assessment that's called contrôle continu here in French.
Now, without this infamous year-end exam, there were so many more pupils who actually were able to pass thanks to this contrôle continu, this average of grades.
Absolutely. A record number of people passed the baccalaureate. Let's take a look at the figures from 2020. You can see just over 95% of the nearly 746,000 candidates passed, compared to just a little bit over 88% there in 2019. So this record number of people passing the baccalaureate is actually part of a trend that we've been seeing over the past couple of years. More and more students have been managing to obtain the baccalaureate, which means that some people say, well, does it still have as much value as it's always had?
Right, but that's still a really big jump, in large part due to this average of grades. What's going to happen this year? Again, education's been affected by COVID. Will there be this average again this year?
Well, as you can imagine, a lot of students would love for the system that was put in place last year to continue this year. And it's true that a majority of the exams have been canceled. The bulk of the final grade will be calculated due to this assessment throughout the year, but there are slight differences compared to last year. First of all, the government wants to maintain something called the Grand Oral, which we're going to get to in just a little bit. It's a new feature of this year's bac. And also the government wants to maintain the philosophy exam that all students that are passing the baccalaureate have to pass. Now, there is a slight difference, though, that students will be able to keep their assessment of throughout the year if that grade is better than the exam grade that they get. So it is a lighter load compared to last year. But despite all this, a lot of high school students, it must be said, are a little bit disappointed.
Moi, personnellement, je sais qu'il y a encore beaucoup de sujets que j'ai pas compris. On a loupé beaucoup de cours et on se sent pas du tout prêt et on a peur en fait.
Ça en perturbe certains qui n'ont pas forcément de bons résultats en cours de l'année et qui avaient plus prévu de tout miser sur les épreuves de bac.
C'est compliqué parce que des personnes par rapport au premier confinement ont clairement décroché l'école. Il y a beaucoup d'inégalités, on le sent.
Physiquement, ça ne va pas, moralement, ça ne va pas et c'est pas possible de continuer comme ça.
Now, in the midst of all of this, of course, the bac is evolving. Flo, you mentioned this new feature a moment ago. This is the first official year of this new formula. Tell us about that.
That's right. Well, overhauling the bac was actually a campaign pledge by Emmanuel Macron when he was running for president. The idea is to better prepare students, teenagers for university, but also the job market. And so part of the new formula is what's called the Grand Oral, a big oral exam. This is our expression du jour. French people love to talk about these kind of big oral exams. You can have them for the bac, but also for university. Now, there is a little bit of an exceptional measure this year due to the exceptional circumstances that we're in. During the presentation, students will be able to consult notes, for instance, that they made during their prep time. Now, a lot of students say they're just not ready for this big oral exam. Meanwhile, the education minister says it's important to uphold as much as possible of the baccalaureate for their own future.
On passe le baccalauréat pas pour le baccalauréat lui-même, mais pour ce que ça va permettre de réussir ensuite. Et donc, il faut entraîner les élèves à des choses positives pour eux. Bien écrire en philosophie, être capable de s'exprimer à l'oral, sont des objectifs pour que, tout simplement, les élèves préparent leur avenir.
For many students, of course, the next step after the bac is university. And there again, it's been a very particular year for French university students.
And that's true for students across the world as well, with classes moved online, libraries closed, canteens closed, a lot of student socializing just not taking place. Many students say that they've felt very isolated, and on top of that, it's been hard to get an internship, it's been hard to get a student job, and so many are struggling financially as well, and all this has had a catastrophic effect on the mental health of many students. According to a survey carried out by a national student union here in France, 3/4 of students say that they feel psychologically weakened, and over 30% say that they have had suicidal thoughts.
La vie étudiante, c'est entre quatre murs, tout est passé à distance. Donc on est devant un ordi, on est assis sur notre chaise de bureau le matin quand on se lève et jusqu'à ce qu'on ait fini notre journée. Puis après, on mange un plat de pâtes et c'est 20h. Et voilà, et puis on va se coucher. Enfin, on va se coucher. On sort pas en tout cas.
On a l'impression de faire des études, mais pourquoi? Parce qu'on ne sait pas si on aura un métier. Il y a plein de métiers qui ont été supprimés pendant la pandémie, qui ont été mis de côté.
It's been such a tough year for so many people, but especially for these young students. Will the COVID crisis make these university diplomas or even the baccalaureate lose their value? That's what a lot of students fear, and a lot of people are actually talking about a lost generation of students here in France.
Flo, thanks so much for taking a look at how those kids are doing. Florence Villeminot there with French Connections. Don't forget, if you have your own questions for Flo about France or the French, you can also reach out on social media or tweet her at Flo Villeminot.